Hello, I'm Luke Darcy and welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by OPSM. Coming up on the show, we'll be chatting to the Kangaroos big man Drew Petrie, an absolute superstar of the North Melbourne Football Club. Dr Peter Larkins to join us and run through all the big injuries from the weekend. And with me now to chat about all the news from round 9 is, of course, Damien Barrett. Great to catch up again, Damo.
G'day, Darcy. I reckon we now get into about Team 13, don't we, by way of clubs thinking they're a chance in the finals.
Yeah, and the rest are probably thinking that season is over. I want to start with the Pies, who a couple of rounds in, Damo, were not feeling as great about their seasons as they are right now. 6 wins in a row, big win over the Adelaide Crows, 26 points at Amy Stadium. We'll speak to Doc about their injury list, which is a bit of a concern, but they are travelling very nicely. Yeah,
and the way they went about it in that last quarter, because it was very close, wasn't it, till very late in that last quarter, or halfway through the last quarter. I think the key point to raise, injuries have really hit them, but they're playing as though they're not being affected by it. And we'll speak to Doc about the 4th season-ending knee injury to Lockie Keefe pretty soon. But look, Tarrant probably has to come back into cover at some stage, but it's a good replacement to have. He's going to be underdone, but it's a good replacement.
Tiger Army up and about, Damo, the other big women's, the Richmond Football Club. They excited this morning, so they should be. 10-goal win over what was the premiership favourite at the start of the year, Hawthorn, was just a sensational result.
I want to get your thoughts on the Tigers. What you saw on the weekend, does that legitimise their claims that they are now arrived? They're here.
It legitimises that they're on the right path. Damien Hardwick, Brendan Gale, as a club, they're just starting to get all the pillars in place that will give them an opportunity.
It's not a false dawn, this one, but there's been a few.
Look, they'll have some moments this year where they'll get beaten. I don't think they'll end up making the 8. They probably finish around 9th, which will hearten Richmond supporters again if that's the result. But what is exciting is you look through now and you say there are some really things to get excited about. Riewoldt, we know their midfield group's better, but the improvement in their defence and their whole defensive structures was great. Some good articles written across the weekend about Ross Smith and what he's brought in team defence. Really exciting time for Richmond, but don't get too ahead of yourself. It might be a couple of years before we see some final 8 results.
Fair enough. Well, let's go from one extreme, as in the good of Collingwood and Richmond, to what I think is emerging as a real problem team, and that being Hawthorn. Where are they, Das? They've had some bad results in their losses.
They're certainly not the premiership favourite, Hawthorn, at all. No idea why that's still the case. I can understand. Look, I was very excited about them pre-season. I thought that they had all the makings. And a few things have gone wrong. No ruckman is a concern for them, and you underestimated Max Bailey, and you go back further than that, they really haven't had someone to compete in that part of the ground. The defence was always an issue, but everyone looked at it, and I looked at it and thought that they had enough defensive structures to be able to cover that. And their midfield, unbelievable. Hodge has been a big out. Haven't really got any continuity at all out of him. And their forward line's just been inconsistent. Buddy's not firing. Cyril's been in and out, had some great games and some games where he hasn't really been involved. So as they sit now, 8th on the ladder, but there are some real issues about where Hawthorn are going to end up.
Will you rule them out just yet as a premiership chance?
You can't, because when you've got Riewoldt and Franklin, regardless of their form, they're 2 of the best handful of players in the competition. Hodge can get back. Mitchell's still a gun. You can't do that, but tell you what, you wouldn't be confident at all about them featuring heavily come finals time.
You say Hodge will come back, but it's a lingering and it's an annoying injury that he's got. And whether it be the hip, which it may well be, but certainly the knee, which they're declaring as a club, his impact may not be what you expect it to be when he does come back.
The problem is you need then a big chunk of time, and he's the sort of player that needs 6 weeks to really get his form up to where it needs to be. So that is a big issue if Hodge has a meaningful impact this year. Hey, Twitter's running hot, Damo, at AFL_AAA, and no surprise that a lot of them are Hawthorn fans, particularly wanting to discuss what happened on the weekend. Calling a man who calls himself The Giving Blog has joined us on Twitter. He believes that the Hawks have had the best list to win a premiership. One problem is Hawthorn players think that as well, Damo. Do you think the flag favouritism has been a factor and got to their head?
Well, you wouldn't think, because you think of the hard nuts that are there in Mitchell and Sewell and Lewis, and you'd be staggered if those guys thought they got ahead of themselves. I mean, you might lay that claim against Buddy Franklin, but it's probably more on the back of being inaccurate in front of goal rather than actually having any misplaced arrogance. So I don't think it's that. I think it's a bit deeper than that. I just think other clubs have worked them out in a way that worries them and is worrying for Alistair Clarkson.
And this from Simon on the tweet says, who says Hawthorn is just mentally weak? Soon as the going gets tough, they pack it in. See Geelong, Sydney and now Richmond matches. Big thing to call Hawthorn mentally weak. but there are some signs that they just can't get the job done when they need to.
I wouldn't put that Geelong match into that bracket. That was a really narrow loss, but you're right. The Sydney loss was not good, nor was the Richmond one.
We also asked on Twitter today, is Buddy still the best forward in the competition? Damo Trent tweeted us saying, negative, too hungry and selfish, only cares about his highlight reel. Tex Walker or Josh Kennedy from West Coast ahead of Buddy. Not sure, Trent, that you might have gone a little hard a little too early. I think Bud, to me, still the premier forward in the competition. Not in great form.
Yeah, just on him, does. I mean, the criticism has been he's having shots from bad angles. Is there more to it than that with what's going on this year? Because he's just not having the impact that we thought he was going to have.
Often the shots from bad angles are the ones that he kicks post high, 15 rows back. His goal kicking,
but even that this year's not totally
well,
on. He's kicked some, yes.
I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but 320 or something he had there for a period of time. You turn that into a 12-5 and you say, look, he's not in great form, but he's still kicked 22 goals. He hasn't been able to convert properly. And then your form line drops. Playing up the ground, I still don't think that's the answer.
Right.
As good as Roughhead's been.
So settling closer to goal.
I know it's an old-fashioned thing to say, but if I was lining up on Buddy Franklin this weekend, he stayed around 30 metres from goal, you're going to be very, very nervous, and it's going to heighten his chances of kicking more goals from better angles more consistently. We need to have a chat about Fremantle, Damo.
We do.
They are, after the weekend, really feeling some pain. The derby's the game that I think Ross Lyon would have set himself for. To only kick 5 goals in perfect conditions. It's the way... I don't know Ross, he won't care at all.
No.
He won't change what he does, but very, very hard to watch.
Well, look, I suppose it's a half-time of that game yesterday. They would have been relatively happy. I mean, I think John Worsfold was happy to just get through those first 2 quarters and just sort of weather the storm they had. But he then opened it up in quarters 3 and 4, and they were exposed in a really embarrassing way. As you say, 5 goals only. You're right about Ross Lyon. When he first got to St Kilda in 2007, he went 4 and 7 over the first 11 games, and the start of the season was good, as Fremantle's was this year round. He's not going to care. This is not about this year for Ross Lyon. As much as he and their supporters were maybe wildly hoping it was going to be a top 4 finish, I think what we've seen it won't be, but it's going to be setting them up. And you're right, he's not going to budge, Das. If there's a pig-headed person in the AFL, it's him. And I say that actually complimentarily. It's not at all a criticism. He will do it his way. It's why they got him, and he will not even be listening to one thing that we or others will be saying about him and his club.
Not a man who compromises himself in any situation, Ross Lyon. Twitter's in meltdown, Damo, at AFL_AAA. And Blake is not a fan of Ross Lyon's Dockers, saying Freo easily the worst team to watch in the competition. He'd rather watch Melbourne get smoked every week, and also says Hawks are overrated. Their window is shut. Hasn't missed too many there, Blake.
No, look, I just still think Ross Lyon will get this right, Das. That they're going to trade and they'll try and bring in a big-name player. Cloak's the one they want. I don't think that will happen, but there's going to be other players come in and play his way.
Yeah, and I think you coach my side and you win. I'm not too concerned about how it happens. Now, I was up in Sydney on the weekend, Damo, for the Bombers game. New stadium up there, Scota, a very impressive 25,000 seat. Now, the Bombers were always going to win this game, but there was a touch of Hollywood about the way they went about. This is the first goal of the match. Paddy Ryder decides to unleash a barrel and kick it out of Scota Stadium, which, you know, probably okay, but that gets shanked. And this is shortly afterwards, and Michael Hurley decides it's barrel time. Hey, James Hird, it just had
2 steps too there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the answer from Hurls, but James Hird, he had that look about him all night. He wasn't happy. He was on a hiding to nothing against his old coach. Looked like he was that keen to get out of there. It wasn't funny. They got the job done, but maybe just a little bit of Hollywood.
Yeah, it certainly goes against what we've seen until round 8 of the year, hasn't it? And look, maybe they're allowed to have a bit of a letdown, knowing they're going to win that game. I don't care what anyone says. They're always going to win that game. Those players know that. I'm not too disappointed in the Torpies there, Das. I know you are, but I'm not too.
I'm very bullish about Essendon. I've seen them live the last 4 weeks in a row. I've got them coming up a lot. I think their list is just sensational. I think they're developing beautifully. The combination of key forwards, key backs, inside midfielders and hard-running play. They're as big a threat in the AFL as any team in the competition right now.
I've asked you a couple of weeks in a row and you've said yes, but maybe with a little asterisk. Can they win the flag?
Bombers can absolutely win it.
Do you expect them to win it now?
Oh, it's round 9. It's a ridiculous thing to say. I expect them to win it. But if everything was equal and they keep developing at the rate they are, they finish inside the top 4 and they play the MCG. There's a lot of 93 about it. And James Hird would be sitting there. And look, internally, they'd be hating that. Don't even get ahead of yourself. We haven't won a final. A lot of Essendon fans are saying, just relax and settle down. But internally, they'd be saying, why should we worry about 2 years' time? Maybe this is a year where it all falls into place.
Yeah. Hey, James Hird not happy with the Bombers. Gary Ablett not happy with his Suns. We'll just take a look at some match vision here. Having a crack here at Rory Thompson, the young ruckman. Now, you might say that's neither here nor there. Now he goes off the ground and has a animated conversation with assistant coach Sean Hart, very respected person in footy. It just goes against us, what we've seen Gary Ablett do, and there's reasons for it, I reckon. There's frustration galore.
I totally disagree with you. I mean, I think that's fantastic. I think you get in and you demand that everyone comes up to your level. And one of the criticisms at Geelong was that he didn't interact, wasn't a leader. He's gone full circle, as he needed to try and drive this group. Now, someone grabs hold of your jumper on a footy field. You haven't got time to say, excuse me, Rory, would you mind just directing it where I told you to direct it at the start of the game? Any danger of putting it in the right spot? Forthright conversations are great. And getting a bit physical, it shows passion. I like it.
Players don't like doing it on camera, though, do they, as a rule? So I reckon the emotions have got the better of him. Cam Mooney certainly thought that was the case when he spoke on SEN yesterday.
At the end of the day, he knew this was going to happen when he signed the big deal. And he had to have known, yes, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to play for this young side, this very inexperienced side, and I'm pretty much going to get beaten every week. He signed the deal and he had to deal with that. And if he's going to be captain of this footy club, and look, if you're going to be a captain of this young side, you have to lead by example. And if you are grabbing your teammates, it's probably not acceptable.
Not acceptable, according to his former teammate there, Das, Cam Mooney. Let's have a look why this frustration is now brewing in Gary Ablett. Have a look at this. Since he left Geelong and goes to the Gold Coast, in deficit by a total of 1,218 points over last year in the 9 matches this year. That's a deficit of 203 goals, which averages basically an 8-goal loss per game on average. He's not used to it, Das. The previous seasons he had at Geelong are there, and I think he's now starting to realise this is a long way out.
He was All-Australian captain last year, one of the best individual seasons. First 3 games this year, 40 possessions, perhaps the best 3 games
anyone's
ever
team won a premiership again last year without
him. He knew what he was getting into, as Cam Mooney said, and I think he's going as well as you possibly could in a side that is developing. We need to have a look at another angry captain, Damo, Nick Riewoldt. He wasn't overly wrapped with this little pass that came his way. Terry Malira, I think. Yep. Rui thought he was on. I'm not sure Rui had a main claim there because he had about 8 blokes around him. But when you're the skipper and you work as hard as Rui, you're allowed to get frustrated, Damo.
I don't know whether you are on that occasion, Das, because he had a player in front of him, man right next to him. And it continues here. This is on the 3/4 time siren where he's still having a crack there at that pass not coming his way. I reckon it's a bit misplaced, that anger.
Oh, look, robust discussions on the field. It might have been something. I mean, we're assuming it was that pass. It might have been the 4 things he did prior to that he's saying, hey, you know our team rule is you don't take them on there. You centre it to the middle of the ground. You haven't got time, as I said, for niceties out there. Yep. And Nick Riewoldt, I think, leading his side beautifully.
I want to have a look at this incident now too, involving the St Kilda Sydney Swans game on the weekend. We see here Swan-Steven go to ground. It looks a bit innocuous, but he does hurt himself. Now, just here, Ben McGlynn comes and gets him. Now, as we slow this down, he is leaving the ground there, Swan-Steven. Now, I raise it because this is against AFL rules. A player who's clearly leaving the ground in that state is considered to be injured and is not allowed to be approached by anyone. Now, it's not like Nick Riewoldt had happened to him against the Brisbane Lions back in 2005, but that is the reason this incident will be looked at by the AFL. And it's at the lower end, I know, Das, but you're not allowed to do it.
You know that I'm not going to be condoning your discussion on that. There's enough doubt to know that he was running through the middle of the ground. And you see Ben McGlynn, when the response was like that, he was almost saying, why are you coming back at me? It was just a regulation bump. Stephen was coming back because he was injured, and I think there's enough doubt there for that one to be let go, Dame. You're not calling for anything.
No, lower end of the look scale. Hey, Chris Scott, very defensive about the contested ball here of Geelong. They haven't won a contested ball count all season. What do you make of it? We'll just hear him first about what he has to say about the downplaying of importance on that stat these days.
It's certainly not what it used to be. I think the priority that virtually every team puts on it means that everyone is okay and everyone trains it pretty hard. Some teams definitely prioritise it more than others, and if you put all your eggs into that basket, it is possible to win it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you win the game.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that, as you said, it's a good point. The sides focus on it so much. when you're good as Geelong are in other areas, foot skills and game plan, and you can see why they're able to win games without it. Having said that, he'll be concerned about losing every game contested possession. He'll want to get that back up, but there are other factors that come into play at the moment.
Not the most important ingredient on the recipe for success anymore? Or
the
not?
fact that it has been for so many other clubs means that perhaps it's made it null and void, because everyone's come up to a standard where it's okay, and I think Chris got looking a little bit further ahead. Hey, time for our OPSM poll question. Head to our Facebook page to register your vote. Will Ivan Maric be All-Australian by season's end? The result in the poll can be seen in Friday's edition of Access All Areas with Damo and Lee Matthews. Looking forward to Drew Petrie talking to him about that very, very shortly. Hey, for Richmond fans, this is going to be something that'll make you smile. The future right here. Dustin Martin's a star, Damo. He kicks it to another man who I reckon's a potential Brownlow medalist, Trent Cotchin. How exciting for Richmond when those two combine. Yeah,
it is. And we saw Damien Hardwick on Access All Areas last week describe him as the best below-the-knee player he's seen since James Hird, and that was good enough for me to be convinced that Brownlow's in the keeping this year almost. West Coaster on top of the ladder, Damo, and a fair bit of the reason due to Nick Natanui, whose ability to do this I could watch all day. Normally gets the landing a little bit better than that. Nick Nat, he found himself with a mild headache after that one, but... Is he going as well as he does, from what you've seen? Yeah, and going better and getting more of the footy, doing that more often, and he is backed up beautifully. And you've got someone as hard as Daniel. I love this. Cop the whack, look at him bounce straight back up and just attack the footy afterwards. Unbelievable bravery. And another man getting back to his absolute best. Dave, I need to take a break here. Next up, we're going to catch up with Dr. Peter Larkins to get an update on the big injury news from the weekend. And now, thanks to OPSM, it's time for Did You See That?
Welcome to Did You See That? A roundup of this week's footy action. In the week of the Westhoff Waltz.
Got it with Westhoff, dancing between tacklers.
Taylor Hunt putting his foot in it. And the reverse smother.
Just right in the middle of his back. Great smother, Thompson.
These are the top clips you missed from a week of ball-flinging fun. Clip 1. For Lenny Hayes, his 250th game was one to be remembered.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want my daughter ever dating Lenny. He does have a little bit of a forgetful memory.
But did you see that the tributes from his friends were better left forgotten?
And he's got really long toes. If you can get them on camera, he's got toes like fingers. They're disgusting.
I hate to think what we learn at game number 300. Clip 2. North Melbourne versus Brisbane was a physical contest. Did you see Daniel Merritt? He's ripped, and so is his shirt.
Daniel Merritt with the jumper nearly ripped off.
Don't make him angry. You won't like him when he's angry. Clip 3. The Western Bulldogs didn't just lose against Geelong. Did you see that Zephaniah Skinner also lost something else?
He's picked up someone else's boot. That's how well he's going at the moment.
Playing for 4 minutes without a shoe can leave one with a soggy sock. Clip 4. Richmond schooled Hawthorn at the G. But did you see Cyril Riewoldt using playground tactics?
Can't teach that. Riewoldt just did it.
This week, tunnel ball. Next week, duck, duck, goose. Clip 5. The Cats' first quarter took the Bulldogs by surprise. But did you see that it was Geelong's Joel Corey who was caught with his pants down?
We're seeing a lot on right now, Joel Corey.
A full moon, even under a closed roof.
Didn't recognise him.
For your chance to win a pair of Oakley sunglasses valued at $159.95, go to afl.com.au/Did You See That and vote for your favourite Did You See That moments.